This split-screen chart illustrates a disconnect for a real electronics company. On the left, we see a textbook case of manufacturing excellence, outgoing defects dropping from 500 parts per million down to 50, and on-time delivery shooting up from 70% to 96%. But on the right, their stock price is collapsing by 66%. By all internal measures, this company was succeeding. They achieved an order-of-magnitude improvement in quality, productivity, and customer service in just 3 years. Yet these localized manufacturing victories did little to protect them from the macro-level reality. Their financial results stagnated, and the market punished their valuation. This exposes a disconnect in how executives view continuous improvement. Managers often assume that if they relentlessly improve the operational fundamentals, cutting cycle times, boosting yields, or improving quality, the financial numbers will follow. That assumption is flawed. When a company improves its processes, it eliminates the need to inspect, rework, or expedite orders. If management doesn't actively follow up those improvements by expanding sales or reducing expenses, they haven't generated profit. They have only created redundant, untapped capacity. Bridging this gap requires a multidimensional architecture. It requires a system that explicitly links the daily actions on the factory floor to the bottom-line survival of the business. That system is called the balanced scorecard. Mastering operations is merely the baseline. Strategic leadership demands taking the exact data from those localized gains and translating them into verifiable financial returns. For decades, managers relied entirely on traditional financial accounting measures, like return on investment and earnings per share. But these industrial-era tools provide misleading signals for companies trying to master modern continuous improvement. These are lagging indicators. They report the outcomes of past actions, offering zero guidance on how to change future behavior. Reacting to this, some managers swung to the opposite extreme, focusing entirely on operational metrics like defect rates and cycle times. But isolating operations creates its own blind spot. Consider the reality of reducing those cycle times. When you optimize a process and eliminate the need for rework, the people and facilities previously doing that rework are suddenly unnecessary. Management must now make a choice: either actively put that newly created capacity to work by expanding market share, or confront the pain of downsizing to eliminate the expense. If they do neither, those hard-fought operational wins actively drain the bottom line. This diagram outlines the balanced scorecard, designed to force executives to view these conflicting realities simultaneously. We start with 4 empty quadrants. It interlocks 4 distinct views of the business: the financial perspective, the customer perspective, internal business processes, and innovation and learning. Evaluating a company through just one of these lenses guarantees a blind spot, shielding executives from seeing how localized decisions impact the true health of the organization. To see how this architecture translates abstract vision into hard metrics, we can look at a semiconductor manufacturer known as Electronic Circuits Inc., or ECI. Like many organizations, ECI operated under a generic corporate mission statement, something along the lines of delivering value to customers. Left unexamined, this is a hollow phrase. Returning to the scorecard, ECI populated the customer perspective quadrant by forcing managers to break value down into specific measurable categories: lead time, quality, performance, service, and cost. This timeline visualization reveals where their internal assumptions failed them. ECI had been celebrating a 7-day delivery window as on time, but when they finally checked with their major clients, they discovered those customers strictly demanded a 5-day window. Their internal metric was masking customer dissatisfaction. ECI had to scrap their own benchmarks and build an external database, redefining on time to match exact customer expectations. Looking now at the internal business perspective box on the right side of the diagram, we see how those new external demands directly dictate internal operations. To hit that 5-day delivery window, ECI had to isolate the critical internal processes that actually drove speed. They pinpointed specific core competencies, focusing heavily on sub-micron technology capability and manufacturing excellence. But identifying core competencies in a boardroom accomplishes nothing. These high-level goals must be systematically disaggregated and pushed down to the local levels, giving individual employees precise targets. Strategic alignment only exists when a technician's specific action on the manufacturing floor can be traced directly upward to a verified expectation of an external customer. This brings us to a significant danger in corporate management: sub-optimization. This occurs when a single department technically achieves its objective, but does so at the direct expense of the broader company. An operations manager, for instance, might be tasked with reducing setup times on a factory stamping press. They can achieve this goal easily by simply running massive, continuous batches of identical parts. Similarly, a plant manager can make their production output and first-pass yields skyrocket. But behind those impressive numbers, they've secretly shifted their production mix away from complex items and entirely into standard, low-margin products. The balanced scorecard actively defends against this illusion. By displaying the full architecture, it forces senior managers to evaluate all operational measures concurrently. There is a cascading logic at play here. Innovation capabilities must generate internal process efficiencies, which in turn must fulfill customer expectations, which ultimately must translate into financial returns. Because these metrics are linked, a department head attempting to manipulate a single operational goal often triggers a corresponding decline in another quadrant. This visibility makes it difficult for sub-optimization to go unnoticed. The framework functions as an organizational fail-safe. It ensures that localized, departmental maneuvering cannot easily masquerade as systemic corporate health. Implementing this requires a departure from executive tradition. It means abandoning the industrial-era, finance-led systems that obsess over dictating and controlling every minute of employee behavior. The modern approach puts strategy at the center, not control. Management establishes a unified, interlinked set of targets and then trusts the workforce to adapt their daily behaviors to whatever changing conditions require to hit those marks. Managing a complex organization today is structurally similar to flying a commercial aircraft. Navigating that environment requires a staggering amount of data. A pilot cannot survive by monitoring a single instrument. They need continuous, simultaneous readouts on fuel, airspeed, altitude, and bearing to predict their environment. When executives rely strictly on lagging financial indicators, they are effectively flying an airliner while looking exclusively in the rearview mirror. This is the true lesson of the electronics company from 1987. Their stock collapse wasn't a case of Wall Street analysts failing to understand their operational brilliance. It was a failure of management to convert those operational victories into actual profit. The mandate is unforgiving. If soaring operational performance fails to materialize in the bottom line, executives must dismantle and re-examine their strategic assumptions. Not all long-term strategies are actually profitable. The balanced scorecard provides the coordinates required to ensure that as an organization accelerates, it is actually flying toward profitability.